Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive right in and peel back the layers on something we all literally use every single day, but honestly, kind of completely misunderstand. We tap our phones, we stream our favorite shows, we trade on global markets, and we hardly ever stop to think about the physical reality that makes all that possible. Well, today we are exploring the invisible internet. It's this massive, surprisingly fragile, and increasingly contested network of undersea cables that literally holds our modern world together. And we're going to look at the geopolitical choke points that threaten it.
So I want you to start off by asking yourself this. Where does the internet actually live? Seriously, picture your data for a second. I think most of us imagine our photos, our emails, our banking transactions just magically floating up into the cloud, right? Like it's transmitting effortlessly through the air, maybe bouncing off a satellite or two. Well, I'm going to shatter that illusion right now. The internet does not live in the sky. It is intensely, heavily grounded in physical reality. In fact, it's resting right at the absolute bottom of the ocean.
Now consider this absolutely staggering number, 95%. According to our source material today, more than 95% of all international data traffic travels physically. It's not zooming through the air, it is traveling through physical cables lying right on the seabed. Your video calls, your banking data, global communications, virtually the whole shebang is physically traversing the ocean floor as we speak. Crazy, right? And this whole invisible foundation of globalization, it consists of a sprawling web of just over 500 undersea cables. That's it. A little over 500 physical, basically garden hose-sized tubes resting deep in the dark ocean, carrying the weight of the entire global digital economy. We think of the internet as this untouchable, virtual thing, but its physical underpinnings are incredibly tangible, and as we're about to see, that makes them incredibly vulnerable.
So that brings us to Section 1, Digital Maritime Choke Points.
Because when your entire global economy relies on physical cables just sitting on the ocean floor, the geography of where those cables actually run becomes absolutely vital. Our source highlights a recent development that perfectly illustrates this. Early this week, Iranian state-linked media floated a plan suggesting they should charge the operators of undersea internet cables in the Strait of Hormuz for access to what they consider Iran's offshore territory. The source notes this comes right on the heels of Iranian warnings that these specific cables are a major point of vulnerability for economies in the Middle East. Now, whether or not this plan actually happens, the message being sent here is unmistakable. Digital infrastructure gives states immense strategic leverage, and it puts a massive target right on the backs of these cables.
So to really grasp this, we need to understand what we call a digital choke point. Basically, these are narrow maritime corridors where critical undersea cables are bundled together, creating these really dangerous single points of failure. The core problem with our whole undersea network lies right here in this concentration of infrastructure. Because, it's geographically easier and it's cheaper, a lot of these cables are bundled together along the exact same seabed routes. They're funneled through a very small number of really tight oceanic spaces. And what that means is a single cable cut in one of these areas, whether it's deliberate or just completely accidental, can dramatically degrade connectivity across multiple regions at the exact same time.
So, where are these choke points? Well, several of the world's most critical submarine cable routes run straight through the Middle East. We are talking about incredibly narrow, highly specific sea lanes, places like the Red Sea, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the Suez Canal, and the Strait of Hormuz. These corridors act as these vital yet hyper-concentrated bridges that connect the massive economic centers of Europe, Asia, and Africa.
And this beautifully, or maybe I should say terrifyingly, illustrates that this isn't just some theoretical threat for the future. It is a highly vulnerable reality today. Just look at the data from 2024. Submarine cable incidents in the Red Sea disrupted around 25% of the internet traffic between Europe and Asia. Think about that for a second. 1/4 of the data flowing between two massive continents was interrupted simply because of incidents in one narrow stretch of water.
Moving right along to Section 2, Worldwide Economic Shockwaves.
So what actually happens when the cord gets cut? Well, because so much of the global economy is deeply interconnected, the domino effects of a severed cable are staggeringly fast and devastating. Let's walk through this chain reaction together. Step 1. The cable is severed. Instantly, you get a fragmentation of global connectivity. The basic ability to communicate that we totally take for granted takes an immediate hit. Step 2. The region fragments. Entire regions start experiencing degraded internet performance or total communications blackouts. Our source emphasizes that countries with very little backup infrastructure, particularly developing states across parts of Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia, would be disproportionately affected by this. And then, step 3, financial markets fluctuate.
Imagine trying to open your banking app, and it just endlessly loads. Now multiply that panic by the entire global financial system. Extremely fast and reliable data flows are literally what underpin our modern economy. We are talking about high-frequency trading systems, global payment networks, international banking transactions. Even a brief disruption makes markets fluctuate wildly, delays transactions, and breeds massive investor uncertainty. And if these disruptions happen to coincide with, say, a conflict along major trade routes, the panic instantly spreads to insurance markets, shipping industries, energy supply chains. Digital instability in one single physical location creates worldwide financial shockwaves.
And honestly, here is the truly frustrating part of all this. While data moves at the speed of light, fixing a broken cable operates at the speed of heavy maritime machinery. Cable breaks happen, sure, but repairs are painstakingly slow, physical, and highly dangerous. Sending a repair vessel out requires safe access to the waters, complex international coordination, and just a whole lot of time. Achieving all of that is highly difficult and sometimes flat out impossible if the break happens in contested or militarized waters.
Which leads us to Section 3, the new seabed battlefield.
Now, the stakes here elevate far beyond dropped Zoom calls and delayed banking transfers. We are talking about the absolute highest levels of national security and military operations. Armed forces all around the globe desperately rely on these physical cables for secure, long-range communications and real-time coordination. Literally everything from military command and control systems to drone operations to complex logistics planning relies heavily on undersea networks. Damage to these specific networks makes military forces fundamentally less effective. It makes it way harder to coordinate with allies, and terrifyingly, it makes the chance of military miscalculations far, far more likely.
Now compare a conventional military attack to deep-sea cable sabotage. A conventional attack on a military target is a clear provocation, right? Everyone knows what happened, and usually we know who did it. Cable sabotage, though, is a completely different ballgame. It happens way down at the bottom of the ocean. It is incredibly hard to figure out who actually cut the cable, or honestly, if it was even intentional. Was it just a dragged ship anchor? Was it some criminal enterprise? Or was it a deliberate, calculated act of war by a nation-state?
This legal and operational ambiguity is an absolute nightmare for global stability. For instance, our source points out that cable breakages in the Baltic Sea are often attributed to Russian action, which highlights just how difficult definitive attribution can be. When a state cannot definitively prove whether a massive disruption to their military and financial network was an accident or a hostile attack, the risk of rapid, totally unintended military escalation skyrockets.
And to make matters worse, existing geopolitical competition is actively hindering our ability to make this network safer. The source notes that the ongoing US-Iran conflict has already delayed the construction of new undersea cables. So think about that. The very geopolitical tensions that make these digital choke points dangerous in the first place are also actively preventing the world from building the vital backup infrastructure we need to secure our communications. It's a vicious cycle.
So I want to leave you with this thought as we wrap up today's explainer. The foundations of our digital world are real, they're concrete, and they are incredibly vulnerable. As the deep seabed transforms into an active zone of geopolitical competition, just how stable is this interconnected world we've built? Any deliberate targeting of this hidden network wouldn't just be a local event. It would reverberate across global communications, economies, and security systems for years to come. So, definitely think about that the next time you connect to the cloud. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.